Hello and welcome today with Riverside Crafts. I'm Ray and I'm in my own craft room, and today we're going to be looking at alcohol inks and how I play with them. So I'm just going to move the camera down so you can see the sort of thing that I've been doing. Okay, I'm just going to go through a few images so that you can see what you sort of think. This is probably what you normally would expect from an alcohol ink, a sort of a background effect that gives you sort of watercolory and sort of amorphous sort of picture. This is like a flower, okay, sort of a flower or a planet explosion, a sunflower, more flowers. This is the sunflower but done on mirror card. I don't know if you can really see it that well because the gloss of the mirror card sort of hides it a bit. Most of the work that I do is on UPO, which is a synthetic paper designed to be used with alcohol inks, so you can get some really sort of quite clever backgrounds and images and that as you sort of play along. So here we go, one of my other ones. More flowers, and then my big peony that I did yesterday. Okay, so that's the sort of thing that I'm going to be doing, and we're going to be working on UPO paper, which is what I said is a synthetic paper, which is quite nice to use, and we're going to be using alcohol inks. I'm just going to go through my tools so you can see what I use to work with, so you've got an idea of what I use. So when I'm talking about alcohol inks, I'm talking about these little bottles here that are done by Ranger. They come in so many colours, everything you can think of under the rainbow. There's loads of them out there and they're very good. One of the things you must remember to do when you're using them is that you need to be in a ventilated space because they do smell a little bit. You can get blending solution, which is quite nice to use, or you can buy this stuff, which is isopropyl alcohol, which does exactly the same job, but bearing in mind that there's a difference in your costings. Now I decant my alcohol into a spritzer bottle, a little tiny squeezy bottle with a tiny dropper on the end. Okay, so that's how I use the alcohol. All right, my other tools that I use to do I use a Posca pen, which is a white one, a black acrylic paint pen, a white gel pen, a black marker, and then I use an art liner, an old paintbrush, my air blower. I also use an air gun, mainly because I have asthma, so trying to breathe down a straw for me is not exactly a good idea. So I have a little tiny compressor that I use. The other thing that I use is an alcohol ink blending pen. These come totally empty. They've got nothing in them when you get them other than the nibs, and you put your own little bit of, and it is little, tiny drops of the alcohol in it, and then you can use it like you would do a marker to help do things. So the first one I'm going to do today is a sort of like a little tiny bit of a similar to what we've just seen. So I'm just going to do a basic one so that you can see how it works and how the inks look. Okay, so this is my piece of UPO. We've got a couple of colours that we're going to sort of we'll go with pool, blue, and a greeny colour. Where we got pistachio will do the job today. So I'm going to do a couple of marks, not too many, not lots. I'm just going to sort of put them along in a line. Some of the colours are going to be quite similar. I might add a different colour in with this yet. Right. Okay, so I have this sort of worm going across my piece of card at the moment. And I'm going to drop my alcohol on. Now you can see that my alcohol thing's a mess, so I've got colour coming from other things as well. Not that it really matters. And you can see you just sort of use the air and it will blow the ink around and give you different shapes and colours and textures as you go along. Change your angles and you'll get different sort of feelings for what you're doing as well. So I'm going to put a little bit more of a greeny colour on. There should be a should have a greeny one here. Can I open it today, or is it not going to work? No, I can't open that one. Oh, we'll use a bit more pistachio instead. We'll do that. And there we go. Now you can move the ink on its own, as you can see. But by adding your blending solution, you get a much more ethereal look about what you're doing. You get this sort of nice sort of trace as you're going along. And that gives you quite a nice effect to have on a card. So that you see how they move quite nicely within on the Yupo. Gives you a lot of flexibility. Okay, so one of the things that I tend to do is I tend to drop ink everywhere. Doesn't mean you can't use it, because it can be cleaned off, but if you let it dry and then add your blending solution in and then squirt it away, you will get a different effect than what you would if you used it straight away. You get sort of a split in the colours a little bit more, and this is quite a nice way to build a flower. Let's come off my thing again. It's got too much ink on it. I got a lot of ink on it earlier, so I've got pink coming through on everything. Not that it matters. You can see how it moves with quite nicely with this. I'm going to show you how it moves now with the compressor. It will make a little bit of noise, but it will be not too bad, I hope. You can see I can get really tiny thin lines coming off and make it sort of quite a different sort of feeling for it. Okay, so this is how I build my flowers up. Sort of go from a centre and out. Okay. So just drop that for a minute. I'm going to put a little bit of blue in the middle again, so that we can have different layers of colour coming through. So put my little bit of blue in. Okay. Now, if you have any queries, I will endeavour to answer all your questions if you leave them on there at the end. I can't see what you're writing, because you're on my phone and I'm upside down, so I have no idea if there's anybody here or not, but I'm trusting that you are there and that you're watching what I'm doing, and you're finding it sort of quite interesting, hopefully. Okay, so here's sort of makes me think of organza, the way it goes out, and it gives you this really sort of ethereal sort of a feel to it. It's not very, it's quite delicate, isn't it, in how it looks. Now, when I've got to that stage, I needed to make it look like a flower. Well, it doesn't really look like a lot of anything at that moment in time, because it's got no centre. Now, I've got a couple of options to put a centre in. I can either colour it in black and then go after it, or I can do something, but this one I'm going to just do a black middle. So I'm using a marker, okay, and I'm just going to put me a black centre in, just a circle for the moment, nothing too fancy. And then I'm going to take my Posca pen, which is a white alcohol ink marker, and I'm just going to put myself some dots and some lines, nothing too sort of obviously neat and tidy coming off it. A few more dots, a little set of dots in the middle, some dots coming around the outside, okay, so that's me white gone on. And now I'm going to use my black one and do similar again, a few scratchy lines coming out and some black dots. And what it does is it gives you a sense of light and shade on your centre, which helps. So I'm just going to dab a few dots around, a few bits out, nothing too much. That was too neat in the middle, let's tighten that out a bit. There we go, and that's sort of a flower. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I make my sunflower, because that's a little bit more involved, but this is how I sort of start. So when I'm starting with my sunflower, I'll show you the original picture. You'll see I've got a large area of the brown for the centre, and then it's coming off in the oranges and the yellows. Well, I shall do that on here, but I'm going to do a slightly smaller centre with larger petals this time, with a bit of luck, depending on what sort of mess I get into. Now, I'm going to be using a couple of colours and a little bit, and I'm going to use a palette as well on this one, because I need to mix a colour, because I don't have a lot of dark browns. So I'm going to add a couple of drops of black to one of my browns, so I get a really nice deep dark brown. Okay, so I'm going to do that now while that's sitting there for a minute. Okay, now I'm going to have a line of brown there and a line of brown there, and that's going to be the edge of my actual sort of sunflower middle. I've got some sort of it's a yellowy colour when it comes out in a minute. All right, and then I'm going to use my brush, and what I'm going to do is just stipple it. Now, the problem with the brush and alcohol ink is don't use a new one, because it will trash them. Your brushes don't get to keep very long. They basically, after a session, they're not much use to you. They will blend out a bit more again if you're lucky with some alcohol, but in general, once they've been used, they're not much good. Okay, now I'm going to come and put my dark bit here. Okay, so that's my edge, a little bit in there. Just going to wipe some off, and we're going to try it. We need this to be dryish before we go too far, so I'm just giving it a bit of a stipple to help dry it off, but also to give that sort of texture that you get with a sunflower. I'm going to come around a bit more to make it a bit more circular. There we go, we're getting there. It's looking a bit better, isn't it? Okay, we've got a little bit of dark brown to go in there. Just put it in. There we go. A little bit more along this edge. Okay. There we go, we're starting to look a bit more like we are nearly dry. You see these golden bits, that's what helped give you this, the centre sort of feeling of texture and sort of shape to it in the end. Right. That will do us for a minute. Now that needs to dry, and the only way to dry it is with a hairdryer. You can't, it will dry naturally, but it will take a while. But you can't use your heat gun because it's too hot and it melts the Yupo. But you do want it to be dry before you do your next step. But don't use your heat guns because the Yupo being synthetic, it just goes and curls up into a mess for you. So it's not going to help. Okay. Now, got yellow and then I've got orange. First of all, I'm going to put some yellow down. And I'm going to put some dots down. Okay, I'm going to just turn on my, again, a little bit of blending solution on it, and I'm just going to push it away. Got some nice bright yellow there. Now this is called ginger, but it's a sort of a warm yellowy colour. And it sort of gives you a nice sort of little bit of warmth to what you're doing. Okay. So now I've got this nice sort of splatter of them coming around this outside edge, but I've lost my brown here a bit. So I'm going to go back into my palette and just drop my dark edge back in, because I've made my brown out, so I can just drop it back where I need it to go with my brush, just to keep it nice and even there. And I can put a bit there just so it comes around, and I've got that nice bit there that I need to keep me the centre of it nicely. Right, so I have got my sort of sunflowery type image. I'm just going to dry it off a second. Okay, now using my black acrylic paint pen. I'm going to draw in some petals. Now I'm going to draw myself one sort of side piece here, and it's going to come and it's going to go a nice round like so. But I'm also going to have one that comes up here, but it's going to be overlapped by the one next to it. Okay, because it's nice, it looks quite nice if you've got them overlapping. Gives you a sense of something's actually happening with them all. Okay, so we can have another one here coming out there. So I've got these now sort of happening around me. I can put myself another one in here if I want to. Right, and bring this to it ends on the bits there. And now I'm going to put some lines in that are going to give me an idea of where my petals are going. Just a few. I found that one of the things that helps is to put a few dots in, just sort of give the idea that that's where it's going, but not be too heavy with them. Just a few. And where it is that you think you're going to have shadow, you can put yourself a few dots there to help you, give you that sense of something's underneath. So you've got shadow sort of there, and because it helps. Okay, so just putting a few dots in. Nothing too much, too heavy. Okay, so I've got petals on my flower, but to make my petals look more like they are really important, I'm going to black out parts of my wrong end. So I can do bits that you can't see. So I'm going to black out bits so it gives you the shape of your petal. Okay. So now you can see how your petals are starting to fill in and be part of what you're doing. Okay. So now it looks a bit more. To make my bit around my centre look a little bit more like it should be, I use the alcohol pen that I said about at the beginning, and I just drop in some ink, and it sort of gives you a dappled effect. Now you can't use the one that you have with your alcohol markers, because once you've done that it's not really much use to you. So unless you've got lots of spare ones, I wouldn't really be doing this with your alcohol marker to blender pen, if that makes sense. Okay, so that gives you a nice sort of, to clean the nib off, you just literally just wipe it on something and it'll clean up. If you've got bits where you want to have more colour filled in, you can use the blender to just pull out the colour so there is more colour where you want it. But that is how I do my sunflower. So I hope you like that one. And now I'm going to do, the next one I'm going to do is the one where it looks like you've got a cone on the top of your flower. Okay, and I'm going to do it in, I've got a really pretty colour called Pale Rose, if I can find it. There it is, this one. Try and remember to put your lids back on your alcohol inks because they do evaporate. Okay, it's just so you're aware, they will evaporate. Now this one is going to be thought of going along there like so. I'm just going to put my on again, and I'm going to start to drop myself some shape in. So that's my base petals to start with for the moment. So I'm going to do another row of dots up here so that I can have secondary petals coming off them. Right, blending solution. Just going to drop it near the top, put the odd drop on and push it down. I've got lots of petals that are drooping away from me. Okay. So at the moment I've got this sort of, it looks like they're all sort of coming this way. Okay, I'll put my lid on. And I'm going to black out a whole area now. Okay, so I'm going to literally black out what I don't want to see. So I'm going to go here and do that. Okay. I'm just putting my marker pen down. If you're looking at it, you think, well, actually I don't want a part of the ink, just take it across and blend and take that bit off. If it's not where you think you want it to be, go over it with the black. Okay. Okay, so that's coming down there. I've got some bits here. I'm just going to cut some black in. Looks a bit weird at the minute. Of that I'm very aware. I'm just going to add some bits in. Just these are like just behind my petals, just so I've got some. It's sort of set against the dark background. Now using my white Posca pen, which is an alcohol, a acrylic pen. I'm just going to put myself in a cone shape here, like so. Okay, and this is going to be the head of my flower. So I'm going to have my light coming in from one side, so I'm going to put more dots on one side. Okay, I'm just going to put my dots in. And the dots work really well on top of the black because it really stands out. And it's just a nice, a different shape to the flowers that you've done already. So it just helps you to do different things. You can have some dots on the other side, but you want to keep the majority of your dots along one edge, because that will give you your sense of light and dark over here. Okay, I'm just going to pat that down there a bit more because I'm not happy with how that looks. That's it. Now, you can draw yourself in your petals, or you can sort of leave it and let people decide where they're going to be. but it's quite nice if you use your marker and just sort of trace a few lines down. It gives you the idea of this is where your petals are. And sort of give them a bit more of a break in it. So it sort of gives you this sort of sense that your flower is just sort of happening around it all. And you can have pieces that come up, so you've got other petals drooping and that, and you can just trace it around and it will give you quite a nice finish. And you can go back in with a black marker and you can add bits in so that you can sort of make it feel like you've got, this is where there are breaks in the petal going up. Use a finer liner to get where you want, and you can echo those that you've just put down in white to help you to break it up and give you a sense that you've got your petals happening one at a time. And that's sort of a sort of dome type flower, which gives you a bit more of a sense that something is happening, and that, but it gives you a way of looking at it in a different way. Okay, so I hope you like that. Okay, so that's done 3 flowers. That's not too bad, is it? And we'll just go back over and do one from a single dot again, just so that I leave you with something sort of a little bit more to think about. Okay, so you're going to put 1 dot of colour. Oh, that's not very good. 1 dot of colour in the middle. Okay, let it spread out for a minute, because the ink does spread really well when you're doing this, which is quite nice. Oh, there was one other thing that I was going to do with you. I've forgotten, but I can do it on in a minute. There we go. Do that in a second. All right, so now you can see how it's spread out quite nicely. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop some little bits of the alcohol, not the ink, just the alcohol, onto an edge and spray it out. One of the nice things about this is you think you've got only used 1 colour and you get so many more colours coming out from it. Okay, so there's another flower, and I'm just going to put, I'm going to put a circle in the middle of this one. I'm going to put a line just in here to give you the idea that actually there's a dome of it in there, and I'm going to put my dots coming up to give you the idea that that's going to be some lines with it. And I'll put a little bit of white on it, so that it looks like the light's coming along. There you go. Got your seed heads. A little bit more black in there, I think. There we go. And there's your other flower. So this afternoon we have done this one, a cone, a sunflower, one from a dried dot of ink, and the last bit I want to do is just to show you what happens when you put the spray on the ink. So I'm going to let the ink spread out like I just did. So I'm just going to let it spread out a minute. And just let it dry off a bit as it spreads. Okie dokie. Now if I spray it, you see how it sort of separates out quite nicely, and you can just do little bits off the edge. So I've got it spread around quite nicely in a moment. Getting there. This makes, by the way, alcohol inks will go on anything that's metal, glass, acetate, plastic. So if you've got old Christmas decorations that have the colours gone off them, you don't like them anymore, you can recolour them with your alcohol inks, which gives you a very different sort of feel to it. You see how it makes it go all dotty when you've sprayed it. It changes it quite a lot. Gives you a totally different feel to when you're using the blending solution by just spraying it on it. This is a good way to make it look like agates slices and that. Okay, so you can do some really cool backgrounds as well on that, but Mako alcohol inks will do as much as you want to do with them. Next time I'm going to be looking at pixie powders and pixie sparkles, so I hope you'll join me for that. Keep an eye out and watch what we're doing. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I'm Ray, and I hope you enjoyed